Kids Cook Real Food, Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector, where, as always, I am here to connect you parents who so desperately want to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information you need. Now, today we're talking to Margie Bissinger about not your kids exactly, but about how you can make sure that you are the best parent you can be by taking care of yourself. Thank you for being here, Margie.
Oh, thank you, Katie. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
So Margie's actually a physical therapist and a health coach. She's a bone expert. And so we will link to her first interview that she did with me on posture, which is like super fascinating. It's totally changed the way I hold my phone. Like I feel really guilty. I feel guilty if I do the normal thing and look down. Like, hold it up here.
I love it.
Awesome interview. So she's an expert on like posture and bones and stuff. So we have to start out, Margie, with how did you get into teaching happiness, which is what we're going to talk about today.
You know, it's such a crazy story because it started really a long time ago for me. It actually was not a happy story, but I was 23 years old. I had gotten married, which should have been the happiest day of my life. It should have been so joyful, but instead it wasn't, because 2 days later, I found out on my honeymoon that the person I had married was seeing another woman almost our entire engagement. And you know, people think now, like, how could that possibly have happened? But in those days, we didn't have cell phones. There wasn't social media or the internet, and we were living in different cities. I was in Boston, and he was doing an internship in Minnesota. So to make a long story short, I moved to Minnesota where I didn't know anyone, tried to work things out, but they didn't. So at that point in time, I decided to move to Chicago because I just didn't want to move back home to the East Coast, because I just didn't want people feeling sorry for me. And so I'm in Chicago, and as a physical therapist, I'm working in an outpatient clinic with chronic pain. So people with chronic neck pain, back pain, jaw pain. And my patients are miserable. They are so unhappy. And they'd always say to me, Margie, you're so happy. What's your secret? And I thought to myself, if they only knew what I had just gone through, they would never be saying this. And one day I went home and I thought to myself, you know, I actually am happy. And at that moment, I realized that happiness is not based on your circumstances, and it's an inside job. And so I decided, well, what was it that got me through this? And I realized it was these happiness habits that I had sort of cultivated during my life, which I didn't know. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to start teaching these to my patients because they're so unhappy. And then I started seeing miracles happen. Back pain, neck pain, you know, tight muscles, things would just start resolving and getting better much quicker. And then I also saw people getting joy back in their life and purpose, and it was amazing. So after that, since that time, I've been incorporating that into all of my treatments, and that was really like 35 years ago. And then I started putting it in my programs, and then people ask me, why don't you just do a happiness program? So that's how my latest happiness course started, which is purely, you know, all based on happiness. So that's how I got started. But it's been so great. Just like everything, I believe there's silver linings. So there was a silver lining because I moved to Chicago, and across the street from me, I met my husband, and we've been, you know, so life works out. But
Perfect.
That's how I started. And then I also I really delved into positive psychology and took specific courses on becoming a happiness trainer so that I really had the tools. But that's how it started. It started out with a bad event, you know.
The fact that teaching happiness habits actually relieved physical pain is one of those, it's like shocking, but not that surprising. You know, and like at first I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that worked. But then when you think about it, like we do all know that our body and our minds are connected, right? And the physical and the psychological is so connected. So like even the cause of their pain could be the way they think about life, right?
So true. And as a physical therapist, you feel muscles. So I saw, and so often we hold tension in our muscles, in our bodies. And when people were able to release that during certain techniques, all of a sudden, you know, their shoulders are free, their posture is better, and they're not having that tightness in their back that they thought was just something they would always have to live with. So again, it's part of a program. Obviously, you have to use good posture and learn good mechanics and, you know, exercise. But that piece needed, you know, we needed to address that piece. And I've seen that, you know, for so many years that I've been working, that piece is so important. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't happy our way to perfect physical fitness, but we also can't be unhappily do it. You know, if we're unhappy, all the physical fitness and efforts and therapy that we're doing is not as effective. Now, Margie, you talk about something called a happiness set point, a base level of happiness. So can you kind of define that term and talk about how we can shift a happiness set point up or down?
Oh, absolutely. So it's sort of like a thermostat, where it hovers around. You usually keep your house at a certain level. Well, that's with people. They have a certain level of happiness. And they've done this, research on this. And they found that everyone sort of stays at the same level. Even, lottery winners a year later are back to their base level. People who become paraplegic a year later are back to their base level. So you have a base level. And what is that made up of? 50% they found is genetic.
Okay.
10% is circumstances. And that's what everyone thinks, oh, if only I had a good marriage, if only I had this, if only I had that, but it's only 10%. 40% are habits. So the good news is that's where we can make a huge impact on the 40%. But now with epigenetics, they feel we can even affect our genes. So there's a huge area that we can increase our set point. And they found that people are able to increase their set point no matter where they start. Even if you're a glass half empty person or someone who the glass is half full, there's room to raise it. And that's what's so exciting. And that's sort of what I teach and what I've seen people are able to do. So, it's very exciting because it's so powerful. That's what I love. And who doesn't want to wake up in the morning feeling a little better, feeling a little happier than they did the day before?
Yeah. You use the word powerful. And that's what I was just thinking, is that there's so much hope there, where we often think that our circumstances dictate the way we feel. And I always call it grass is greener syndrome. Like, if only this would change, blah, 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 my life would change. So we truly need a paradigm shift. We need to tell our brains, like, actually, no, like 40% you're completely 100% in control of. And you're saying even the 50% that we're sort of quote unquote born with, we can even begin to shift that. That's incredible. So how does, and we'll get into logistics a little bit, but how does increasing our happiness affect our health?
Well, that's what's so amazing. They found that our immune systems, people are 35% less likely to get sick who are happy. Amazing. Happy people live an average of 9 years longer.
What?
And cortisol, which I know you're familiar with, our stress hormone, is 32% reduced in people who are happy. And cortisol, our stress hormone, is our body's fight or flight, and does so many negative things because it's there to protect our body. So cortisol is, when we want to run from the tiger. Right. And so what happens is our blood pressure increases, our blood sugar, because all the blood needs to go to our arms and legs to run from the tigers. It's fine temporarily, but so many people are under chronic stress and have chronic elevated cortisol. And it also tells your body, when your cortisol is increased, to shut down digestion, to shut down reproduction, shut down your immune function, because we have to run. So that's huge. Stress and happiness sort of go hand in hand. But by being happier, reducing our stress, we're significantly improving our health. And even sleep. They found sleep disorders are 47% higher in people who are not happy. So it's amazing.
Yes. Oh, I believe that. And when we talk about cortisol and chronic stress, our bodies, when we're feeling stressed, our bodies feel like we need to run from the tiger, but we're really just stressed about too much on our calendar, or having to make dinner quickly, or, oh my gosh, like my kids aren't as smart as the kids next door, or whatever. Like, these aren't running situations, and yet in our body we react in that same way. And so we can't change the situation, but we can change our bodies.
I love that, Katie, because people don't realize that. They don't realize worrying about a dinner party or worrying that their child didn't do well on a test is exactly the same physiologically to their bodies as actually having, being in a car accident or running from the tiger.
Right.
It's crazy.
Or forget the tiger, being in a rough area of town,
right.
and wondering, is your pepper spray close enough, right? Like, obviously we know the adrenaline, we could predict the adrenaline would be high there, and our muscles are twitchy, and we're doing the same thing, worrying about who to invite and how to deal with Facebook or whatever. Like, it's definitely not good for our health. We can't change our culture. Now we're talking about parenting here.
Okay.
So let's talk about the family environment. How does parental happiness affect children's happiness?
Well, I think the most important thing is being an example for your kids, because happiness and mindset are contagious, and your kids are going to model what you do. So if you're, I'm a big believer in positivity, and so many people, and we're wired actually for negativity, because way back in the caveman days, we had to be aware, was there an animal that we had to run from, or there were true dangers. So it was more important to be aware of the dangers than to be happy that someone said something nice to us. And think about that. When someone gives you a compliment, you get 20 compliments, and someone says one negative thing, what are we dwelling on?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
So we tend to dwell, we tend to be wired so that the negativity will stick to us. It sticks to us, where the positivity is more like Teflon, and it just, slides off. Not Teflon that we ever use, right, Katie?
Well, not in my house. Heavy coconut oil.
Anyway, so when you have a home and you're focusing on the positives, and you're focusing what's good, and you're focusing what's going right, that's going to translate to your children. And versus so often people focus on the negatives, oh, you did that wrong, but what went right? And so when we change that and we focus on what's good in life, what already exists that's good, and we build on that changes the entire environment of a family. I mean,
it's beautiful. And then the kids have all those good health benefits that
right.
we just talked about, and we want them to be healthy. Yeah, I'm probably the perfect case study for you, just because for me, like, that's really hard. I completely dwell in the negative, and I can see that on a daily basis when I am stressed in the morning, or if we're like, it's just, I don't know why it happens when we come home from church. It shouldn't. My husband's like, why are you always cranky after church? Like, you should be more joyful. I'm like, I don't know. There's something about walking into the door and everyone's like, what's for lunch? I'm hungry, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just want to like change out of my dress. Anyway, but I can totally feel it when I give into my inclination to just like be negative and wallow in that, and I serve lunch quickly and I'm slamming things around and I'm grumpy. Like, what happens? Well, lunch is quick and quiet and people leave, and the next thing I'll hear is like my daughter saying to a, one of her little brothers, like, John, why did you leave your sock in the middle of the room? Like, get that out of here. And I'm going, hey, don't yell at him. Like, that's the first time you've said it. But I'm like, gosh, that's what I've spent the last 20 minutes doing, is using that voice. So you want to talk about contagious feelings, like, it just kills me. So I'm your like before case, and I know in my intellect that it's important to be happy and joyful and positive, and it's going to help my kids' health. So now let's get into, what do we do? I think you talk about these 7 pillars of happiness. So kind of walk us through those, and
sure.
I'm waiting for the practical tips that's going to just change my nature.
Okay, great. So the first the first area is the foundation. And I think here what's so important is being a victor in life and not a victim. Because so often people are in victimhood. And that's oh, poor me, or oh, I have to do this, poor me. And the minute you're in victimhood, that just zaps your happiness. There's no way you can be happy when you're feeling to be a victim. So that's one of the best mind shifts, because I'll find that all of a sudden I'm like feeling bad. I have a million things to do and I want to do this. And then I say, no, okay, be a victor and take control of the situation. Instead of focusing on the problem, what are the solutions? So that's where the foundation is. And there's a lot more, though, obviously, that you can learn, but I'm giving quick tips.
Yes.
And the second part is the pillar, and this is like a house, a happy home. So there's the foundation. Then there's the pillar of the mind. And this is, Hans, what we were talking about. We're so geared to negativity. So I'll give you a tip right now for this one, because we can rewire this. Believe it or not, we are able to rewire. So I'm going to give you 3 things, actually, because I think this is so important for the audience. So number 1, focus on the good. You wake up in the morning and you're a detective looking for what good there exists, because there's so much good and we just don't see it often when we're preoccupied. What's for lunch? Oh my God, he has to get to school. Or I have to do this. We forget to look. Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful day. The trees are gorgeous. So just be a detective. And if that's really hard for you, pretend you have to give out 3 awards that day, whatever it is, the nicest scenery, the kindest person, or whatever. Just start looking for the good in the day. That's number 1. Number 2 is, when something positive happens, Someone gives you a compliment. You see a sunset. Absorb it into every cell in your body for 20 seconds. You know, if someone says, oh, I love that project you did. It was nothing. Thank you so much. I really worked hard on it, and just feel it, absorb the good. And then the third thing is when you do have a negative thought, which we are going to have, the goal here is not to be Pollyanna and the world's amazing, because it's not. The world is stressful, and that's not the goal. The goal is to be resilient and to have.
Right.
So when you do have a negative thought, which happens, then counter it with 3 positives. They have to be true, and they have to be something that exists. But we're just sort of changing our system to be more positive. And they found that the happiest people have it the opposite way, where the positive sticks and the negative slides. So, but we can change this. I've been doing this for so many years. So that's what's so exciting. So that's the pillar of the mind. The next is the pillar of the heart, and living with an open heart. So that would be gratitude, compassion, forgiveness. You know, there's ways and there's things to learn, but incorporating those things into your life. Pillar number 4 is my absolute favorite. And it's not everyone's favorite. Everybody has the areas that, you know, oh yeah, I need to work on this one. But this is what I love. And this is what I found for people. A lot of people don't do this. It's a pillar of the soul. And so it's being, when you're plugged in to an energy that is greater than you are, it's really miraculous, because when you're out of alignment, you have the tools to get you back into alignment. And so it's something that it doesn't happen immediately, and there are ways to cultivate that, but it's just very powerful. You know, anything people do, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, everybody has their own things where they feel more connected to something greater than they are. So that's the pillar of the soul. Then there's the pillar of the body. And you're good at that, Katie, because you teach everybody how to eat healthy, and you're doing a tremendous amount with nutrition. But that's nutrition and exercise, because we need to keep our bodies healthy. You know, there's all sorts of happiness chemicals, and when we're giving ourselves junk and not exercising, you know, we have to take care of ourselves. And if we want happy kids, you know, if we don't take care of ourselves, I can't stress this enough, but if, you know, so often, people do. And I, you know, my kids are now grown, but I do this even still. You do everything for your kids. And then sometimes so that you're not taking care of yourself. But if your cup isn't full, you're not going to be able to give from a place of giving. And it's going to be obvious. So I just can't tell you enough. And people, if you're putting on that fake smile and it's not genuine, that, first of all, that's painful. No one wants to do that. It's a mask. And people, it's obvious. So we don't want to be there. So take care of ourselves. That's the exercise. Then we have the pillar of, then we have the roof. And the roof is purpose. Living a life with your passions and purpose. It really, as we all know, when we're involved in things that are on our purpose, and even sometimes things bigger than ourselves, we all are happy. And the last one is the garden. Who do we surround ourselves with? Just like we talked about, you know, it's contagious. Before I want to say one word. There was a book that I used to use many years ago called Andrew's Angry Words. I don't know. And it was our family book, because one person said something yelling at them, and that one started yelling at that one. And so I don't even know if it's still in print, but it was great, because when someone would start with like Andrew's Angry Words, and we realized we were starting that negativity going. But back to who we surround ourselves with. Are we surrounding ourselves with roses and gardenias and people that nourish and support us? Or are we surrounding ourselves with weeds and people that really, really make us feel more negative? And I think we want to cultivate nourishing relationships. And I think it's very important that we examine and we figure out ways that we can, you know, not let people affect us. And I think one of the best things is when we increase, it's sort of who's the stronger force. When we increase our own positivity, you know, when we increase our own light, it doesn't affect us. And as a physical therapist, I had to really practice this, especially dealing with chronic pain, because I would leave work ready to kill someone. You know, there were certain patients who really were just so angry. And if I let that transmit to me, so I had to really work on building myself up and figuring out what I can do. So I think those are the pillars.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things I noticed. So first of all, I noticed that the body, which would be nutrition and exercise, was like pillar 5, I believe, if I was counting correctly. And their foundational order, right? Like, so, and sometimes I look at this and I go, oh my gosh, I'm spending so much time and energy feeding my family well and being concerned about their bodies. But then when I hear stuff like this, I go, oh my gosh, like it's not going to matter if I don't get their mindset and their soul and their kind of happiness level in order.
Well, I think the
First,
most
it's not going to
important
matter.
thing is not to worry, is that I think it's
There I
amazing.
go negative again. Shoot.
I think, honestly, to give you credit, it's amazing what you have done. You have done so much, in all these categories. So you're a role model for your children. You're doing purpose. You're helping people all over. So I think you're cultivating amazing amounts of good. So don't even go there, and don't even go, oh, look at what have I done on the positive. You've done so much. Not, oh my gosh, that's not the point. The point is all of these areas are important. So what you've done with the nutrition and the body is amazing, and it's fantastic. And just absorb that. Like, yes, thank you,
Yep,
Margie.
I need my 20 seconds now. That was an inadvertent example, by the way. I did not actually intend to go negative. I just did it naturally. So
I love it.
I'm going to rest in your compliment for 20 seconds now.
Absorb it. We all, and just, it's building. And actually, the body is the fourth one. It doesn't matter. There's not really an order. The body is the fourth one. I just said the other one first.
Oh, okay. So it's not a necessarily,
I think the foundation,
foundation.
I do think the foundation is important to be first, because you have to take control and take responsibility for your happiness. It's just not that, la-di-da, I'm going to be happy. There are things and habits. That's what they found, that when people adopt the habits that happy people have, they become happier. So these are all, like when I teach my classes, like 21, there's all different habits. But the foundation is important, because if you think that, and just so you know, how do you know if you're a victim? I'll tell you. Shame, blame, complain. Those are 3 ways to know you're in victimhood. And that's a good thing for families. You can even play the blame, shame, and complain game and put money in a box, like when you, and it goes to charity or something, or just be aware that, you don't want to have people have entire dinner conversations complaining, this is terrible, that's terrible, this is more terrible. Anyway, it doesn't matter the order, and I think you build on it, and you don't want to go into overwhelm. So I don't want anyone listening to go into overwhelm. Where you're at is amazing, and I'm sure you're doing incredible things for your children. So you start with that, and then you start with adding one thing at a time. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter, because you certainly don't want to go into overwhelm. Overwhelm will be the absolute opposite what we want to do.
Right, because then you give up. And sometimes, it's too hard, and then you give up. And I think, I'm always processing as I'm, listening to people share, especially like, 7 steps. Now I know I have folders to put them in now. But I'm always thinking like, well, which, where am I in what you're talking about? And so I've already identified like my pillar that to work on first is the mind. And I mean, you said it was the most important one, but I see that in myself. And I've had friends say, Katie, you have a weird way of taking compliments. Anytime someone compliments like, earrings or clothes or whatever, like all you have to do is say thank you. Right?
Okay, Katie, I challenge you now. Everybody listening, we're challenging Katie. So start this week, and I want you to let me know that when people give you compliments, you're going to say thank you and think about that. Oh yeah, these are nice earrings, or I am doing a lot of good.
Yeah. Well, here's what I would do. And this is why people said it was so weird. I would always tell them where it came from. Like it was an excuse. I'd go, oh, thanks. I actually got it on super sale at Kohl's. Or like, oh, thanks. Like my mother-in-law gets it for me. I don't know how to shop or whatever. Like always would explain where it came from. As if that was a necessary piece. Isn't that funny?
No, but I do the exact, I don't anymore, but I used to do the same thing. Oh, you can get this here. Oh, it's nothing.
Yeah. It's like a way of ducking the compliment.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I think a year or 2 ago, I started making a conscious effort of like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, because it like brushes off the compliment and then it doesn't stick. So I love the way you described it, just letting that absorb and accepting it, right? We're okay. We can accept that we're okay. That's not unhelpful. And in fact, it's really helpful for us. So fabulous. So I just want to challenge everybody to kind of look at which pillar do you need to work on first. I even thought like maybe I should set a calendar reminder for like 3 p.m. every day. Like say 3 positive things before you swipe this away.
You know what else?
Right?
Yeah, you can. You know what I like to do also? Like a journal of your wins or something, just to keep magnifying the positive, because it's there. That's the thing. But that's a good idea. What you just said. You could, or take appreciation breaks, like a certain time. You know what? What's good? Or exactly, just to start. If you need to schedule it in, then do that. I think that's a good idea, but only do that. Start with just one
Yep.
thing, because you'll get yourself crazy.
Yeah. And you can do this as a family. I know
Yes.
we pray at the end of the day, and so we always start out with thank yous. And even and we make people say like more than thank you for the day. Like if a kid tries to get away with thank you for the day, say you need to find one specific thing. I should up it to 3 maybe. But and so I
Yeah,
know
no,
like
that's fine. That's
yeah,
great.
but brain science says when you see the positive and enumerate it, when you talk about it, you train your brain to look for the positive in the next day. So even the little steps begin to expand that feeling of gratitude and positivity. So let's talk about families. What habits? You mentioned the word habits, and those are hard to set, which is why you work with
Yeah.
people, and we don't just like push people off into the world with a little information. But what practices have you found to be most effective in helping people increase their happiness, and especially for parents to share with children?
Yeah. So what I love what you do. That's fantastic. And so I think there's a game. I think this sort of ties it all, called the appreciation game. And you
Mm,
just go around the table and everyone says what they appreciate about the other person. So, you can even do this with a spouse or with a
yeah,
friend, if things are sort of rocky.
yeah.
You just go back and forth, saying one thing you appreciate and the other. But in a family, if you're around the table, what a nice thing. Instead of, like at Thanksgiving, we give thanks for whatever, but it's sort of nice. It doesn't have to be that. I'm saying it's nice to just get together and play the appreciation game. Oh, you know what? You've been so kind to me and I just appreciate you. It's really helped me get through this. Or, and you say it to each member, go around, each
Mm,
member says that to the family. And it's just a really wonderful way of cultivating that. And then your children will learn that. And that's how, and it starts changing their brains as well, because that's what's so amazing when you start any of these practices, and when even you increase your happiness, you'll start seeing your children model that. And there's just nothing better, because who wants their children to be tense and nervous and
mm,
wear that fake smile. You don't want that. And it's just amazing. That's because it is contagious.
mhm.
And our words are so powerful, so that when we do any of these things, the 3 positive things, and then, but I love as a family, so I would say doing I think that's a great way to start. The appreciation game is I don't
Yeah.
want to give them too many things, because then people will feel
Right.
overwhelmed.
Right. No, but and that's easy. You can do that at the table. And as
Yes.
a mother of introverts I have one who's a really slow processor, so that would trip him out to have to come up with that on the fly. So it's something, in certain family situations, you might want to prep people in advance, right? Introduce the appreciation game one night at dinner, and you give examples, and then say,
Yeah.
we're going to do this tomorrow, right? So kids and adults can think about it, just because if you're stressed about what you're going to say about someone else, you won't be absorbing
Right,
your
right.
own appreciation.
That's a good point. If just that's a really very good point. But the other thing is, it's amazing who doesn't want to be appreciated?
Yeah.
I think that's, people in industries, that's when they ask what's most important, people think it's salary and this and that, but it's really everyone, at the end of the day, just wants to be appreciated.
Mm,
And so for what they've done, whatever it is. And I think that's also important in families, like see the good, like whatever it could be, whatever your child has done, see the good, and really look at them as, yes, they have this, instead of, oh, they failed the test, they did this and that, because it really changes the person that they'll become.
mhm.
And it also just changes your viewpoint in
Yeah.
terms of, yeah.
And it is, I almost have tears in my eyes listening to you talk about this, just thinking about how powerful it could be in families. I know we just went through well child checkups, and we have to fill out this long form each time. But one of the things is, what are your kids' strengths, and what are their gifts? And it's just so good to think about those and to write them down. I said, I hope that, when our kids are 18, I hope our pediatrician gives us all those, because it's like the journal once a year of how they've changed. I think it's kind of fascinating.
I think that's so important, because in the school system and in our society, certain things are rewarded and other things aren't rewarded. And sometimes it's hard when you have a child, and everyone has their own gifts, everyone. And, sometimes they're not realized till later in life, but everybody, whether they're creative, whatever it be. And so, sometimes it's so hard for or something different than what's looked upon in society. So I think the more we can augment that, and the more we can focus on that. And again, obviously there are areas that need to be strengthened, but in the realm of, that they have their gifts and they're amazing who they are, I think is so important.
Yeah. And Margie, I want you to kind of tell the story of how you realized that young moms really need this information.
Did I tell you
with
this?
your husband's practice, right?
Yes.
I just think it's because I think we need to hear that. Like I've come to not love the word self-care because I feel like it's overused and people see it as an excuse, but there's a real reason for moms to, bring their best self to their families, right?
I just like to think of the cup. If your cup is empty, you're not really going to be able to give. So if you want to be most effective, and they're not going to be as well. I mean, if you want to be most effective and in every aspect of your life, keep your cup full. It's self-love. But I didn't know. I told you the story, Katie. So the story is, so I'm doing this happiness course. It's online. And my husband, which was so surprising, came to it. But I guess the first reason he came because he was the tech person the first time. But he didn't have to come the second time. It was an online course, 8 weeks. And actually now it's longer because we meet once a month. And so he came and did it. And I didn't know. He's an OBGYN. And he delivers lots of babies and he works with lots of mothers. And I didn't know he started teaching this to his patients. So one day he's like, Margie, this stuff is so powerful. If you don't focus on young mothers, they need this more than anybody because they're so stressed out and just there's so much on their plate and they don't want their children to be unhappy. They want to be examples for their children. So he's been teaching it now for a while. And so he was the one that said to me that you really need to give these skills. And I think back, yes, I've been teaching them, but even because I've done way more training, certain things I wish I had known, when my children were younger. But it's great. So that's how I got involved with working with young mothers, because it really is a need, because it is a stressful time and it's so easy. And I was right there with everybody, so busy, multitasking, doing a million things and just not putting my own self-care. And what I tell people now is, cut things out. It doesn't matter that your children are doing 10 soccer leagues, or it doesn't matter that you're doing, just think what's important so that you can have that balance. Once that balance is off, then you need to adjust, because you really need to have work, life, kids in balance and make the changes. So you take control. So you are the victim and you are the victor. and not the victim. Oh, poor me, I'm involved with 20 million things and I have to do this. You can change that. And you just start with one thing at a time. So that's how I got started, though. It's funny. And now he told me, Margie, and he already spends a lot of time with his patients, but he's like, my schedule, I'm spending so much more time now. I'm so late because I'm working on all these things with people.
Aw, that's so beautiful, though. And that's why I am just so pleased to introduce you to my audience, because we are busy moms, we have crazy lives, but there was ways to sneak it in, right? If you have to sit at those soccer games, bring that gratitude journal.
Yes.
Or stretch, on the side. I just talked with Dr. Ryan Wolfert, and he was saying, if you're at your kid's soccer game or football game or practice or whatever, do your stretches and lift things and just like be active instead of sitting for 2 hours in the bleachers, like little changes.
Yes, they don't take time. They don't even breathing. There's so many things, even just the stress reduction things. And I know you're good at that.
Yeah.
Even the stress reduction things are going to take you to a point so that your resilience, so like when the wave comes, you're able to handle it. So the more you build up in all the areas, everything, then you are just able to, because life is stressful and things happen and we're not going to change that, and we can.
But only if we can 10%.
Can you believe that?
Amazing.
Isn't that hard to believe? But they've done research on this, right? I know everyone says, the better marriage, I'll be happy. Well, that's when I realized, because my thing was pretty bad at that time. And it was like, wow, how did I get through that? But that's, it's amazing. But when you build up your habits, it's like unconditional happiness. Like you have a good feeling, a base that you're a light, you feel at peace. So that when things happen, you're able to, when joyful things happen, great, but you don't have to be dependent. It's not a happiness dependent on your circumstances. That's the whole point.
Yep. Yeah, and happiness is habits, and habits do take a little work, which is why your course, Happy Me, Happy Life, is a great resource because you can walk with people through steps and build those habits over time, which is
Yes.
fabulous. So we will definitely, link to that and help people find you anywhere we share this video. I was going to have you end with one practical tip, but I feel like the appreciation game was one practical tip. So what's like instead the final just message of hope for moms
Okay.
who feel like I'm not happy? What the heck do
Okay,
I
two
do?
things. One is the gifts that I have for everybody, the meditation and the
Yes.
journal. Yes, that will really help because there's tips in that. And the meditation's a 7-minute meditation you can do in the morning. And it's just all positivity. And so if you listen, and it has music infused too. So
Beautiful.
that's one. But I think the best thing is, just like on the airplane where they tell you to put your mask on first and then your children's, I think take care of yourself and because we don't. I think if you start with that and maybe the negative thoughts, I think you're going to be amazed at how powerful these things are, because the more you can practice positivity and each step, it's just, you'll see it in your families, and then it becomes contagious. That's what I love. Don't you feel good when you're around happy people? Well, it's just a win-win situation. So
That's great. Well, I'll tell you what, as soon as we get off with proper posture, I'm going to change. I have this like daily reminder in my phone at noon to pray, but it's been in there too long. So I just swipe it away. I'm like, I'll do that. I'll remember to do that later. So that doesn't work. So I'm going to change that to say 3 things that are positive. Do not swipe this away until you do it, Katie. And
I love that, Katie.
We'll see how long that will last until it becomes too mundane and I need to do another, great chat with you and get
well,
inspired.
you have to let me know. Okay, so I'm challenging you, so you have to keep me updated.
Accountability. Okay, that's good. That's good. All right, Margie Bissinger, this has been fabulous. I feel more joyful already. I know exactly what I'm doing. The next 3 things I'm doing are all like inspired by this conversation. Happy Me, Happy Life is the program. Margie Bissinger is the expert. The smile on her face speaks volumes. You just bring joy to every conversation. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, and thank you, Katie. But just know how much amazing things you are doing. That's your other challenge. Just soak in all this incredible work you've done to help the lives of people all over. So yay for you. So.
Well, thank you. All right, guys. Next week, I will see you again with more experts who have the information you need to raise those healthy kids. And I definitely want to leave everyone in the audience with the challenge to do one tiny thing. Do one tiny thing toward positivity and see how that being contagious can begin to change your family in tiny ways. I'm Katie Kimball for Kids Cook Real Food.